Most people wait to feel motivated before they take action. That habit keeps them stuck longer than they realize. The people who create lasting success are not the ones who always feel inspired. They are the ones who keep moving when motivation is gone. If you've ever started strong but struggled to stay consistent, this audiobook is for you. Stay with me until the end because you'll discover practical ways to build self-control, create daily habits that actually last, overcome setbacks, protect your time, strengthen your focus, and develop the discipline that keeps working even during difficult seasons. These are simple principles you can begin using today, no matter where you are in life. If you're ready to stop depending on temporary motivation and start building a stronger, more reliable version of yourself, subscribe now and join this journey. Take a deep breath, give your full attention to the next few moments, and begin building the discipline that can change your life one decision at a time. Chapter 1. Choose discipline before feelings shape your daily decisions consistently. Most people believe that the quality of their life depends on how they feel each day. When they wake up energized, they expect to work well. When they feel discouraged, they assume it is time to slow down. This habit seems harmless because emotions feel honest, but honesty and usefulness are not always the same thing. Feelings describe a moment. They do not define what is possible. Discipline begins the day you stop asking your emotions for permission to do what you already know is important. That single shift changes the direction of countless decisions. You no longer wait for confidence before speaking honestly. You no longer wait for excitement before exercising. You no longer wait for inspiration before starting difficult work. Instead, your choices become guided by values rather than moods. Life becomes steadier because your standards remain stable even when your emotions change. Human psychology naturally favors comfort because comfort once helped our ancestors survive. Conserving energy was useful when food was scarce and danger was common. Your brain still carries that ancient programming. It constantly searches for the easiest path because it believes ease equals safety. That is why the alarm clock feels louder on cold mornings. That is why social media seems more attractive than meaningful work. That is why difficult conversations are delayed until they become even harder. Your brain is not trying to ruin your future. It is trying to reduce immediate discomfort. The problem is that modern life rewards people who can manage discomfort instead of escaping it. The challenge is no longer surviving the day. The challenge is choosing actions today that improve tomorrow. This explains why knowledge alone rarely changes behavior. Millions of people understand the importance of healthy eating, regular exercise, focused work, and honest communication. Information is everywhere. Transformation is rare. The difference is not intelligence. It is the ability to act despite temporary resistance. Discipline closes the gap between understanding and doing. Without it, wisdom remains an interesting idea instead of becoming a lived experience. Every meaningful improvement begins when action becomes more important than emotional convenience. Consider the person who promises to wake up early every Monday. Sunday evening is filled with determination. Plans are written down, goals feel exciting, the future looks clear. Morning arrives and everything changes. The bed feels warmer, sleep feels more valuable. Suddenly the reasons for staying in bed sound reasonable. Nothing about the goal has changed overnight. Only the emotional state has changed. Many people mistake this feeling for reality. They believe the morning version of themselves has discovered new truth. In reality, they are simply experiencing temporary resistance. The disciplined person understands this difference. They recognize that feelings are temporary visitors, not permanent advisors. One quiet decision, repeated consistently, becomes part of personal identity. Identity grows through evidence, not intention. Every time you complete a difficult task, despite not feeling ready, your mind collects proof that you are dependable. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your mind collects different evidence. Confidence is often misunderstood as something you feel before taking action. More often, confidence develops after repeated actions demonstrate reliability. You begin trusting yourself because your behavior keeps confirming your words. This form of self-respect cannot be purchased or borrowed. It is earned through ordinary decisions that most people never notice. Many people expect discipline to feel powerful from the beginning. They expect determination, excitement, and certainty. Instead, discipline often feels ordinary. Sometimes it feels inconvenient. Sometimes it feels boring. Repeating healthy behaviors rarely produces dramatic emotions in the moment. Washing dishes after dinner is not exciting. Saving money instead of buying something unnecessary rarely creates immediate pleasure. Reading 20 pages while others scroll endlessly through entertainment may even feel lonely. Yet these quiet decisions slowly reshape a person's life because consistency changes what intensity never can. Extraordinary lives are often built through remarkably ordinary actions repeated without negotiation. There is also an important difference between making a decision once and making it every day. Many people believe discipline requires constant internal debate. They ask themselves every morning whether they should exercise, study, or complete meaningful work. Each debate consumes mental energy. Eventually, emotions win because emotions speak loudly when decisions remain open. The disciplined individual reduces unnecessary choices. The workout is already scheduled. The writing session already belongs on the calendar. Healthy meals are already planned. By deciding once, instead of repeatedly negotiating, they preserve attention for the work itself, rather than wasting it on endless internal arguments. Your environment quietly shapes your decisions long before willpower becomes necessary. If distractions surround you, discipline becomes harder than it needs to be. Psychology shows that people often underestimate environmental influence because they prefer believing every choice comes purely from personal character. Reality is more complex. A phone placed beside your workspace silently invites interruption. Unhealthy food left within reach quietly encourages impulsive eating. Constant noise weakens concentration without asking permission. Discipline is not only about resisting temptation, it is also about designing conditions where good decisions become easier. Removing unnecessary obstacles is not weakness. It is wisdom applied before temptation appears. Relationships reveal another side of discipline that often goes unnoticed. Choosing calm instead of immediate anger requires discipline. Listening completely before defending yourself requires discipline. Keeping a commitment even after excitement fades requires discipline. Trust grows when people behave consistently across changing emotional states. Friends, co-workers, partners, and family members rarely expect perfection. They value reliability. They want to know your character will not disappear every time frustration appears. Emotional maturity develops when principles become stronger than temporary reactions. That stability creates safety in every meaningful relationship. Failure also changes when discipline becomes your guide. Undisciplined thinking treats failure as evidence of personal weakness. Disciplined thinking treats failure as information. A missed opportunity becomes feedback. A rejected application becomes experience. A difficult conversation becomes practice. This perspective protects emotional energy because mistakes are no longer personal verdicts. They become teachers. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" the disciplined mind asks, What can this experience improve? That question creates movement. Complaints create stillness. Growth belongs to people willing to learn faster than they become discouraged. Fear deserves careful attention because it influences countless daily decisions. Fear often disguises itself as reasonable caution. Someone delays starting a business because the timing never feels perfect. Someone avoids applying for a better position because another qualification always seems necessary. Someone remains silent because speaking honestly feels uncomfortable. These choices appear practical on the surface, but deeper examination often reveals fear protecting familiarity. Discipline does not eliminate fear. It prevents fear from making final decisions. Courage is rarely the absence of anxiety. More often, it is disciplined action continuing while anxiety remains present. The mind also enjoys immediate rewards because they provide quick emotional relief. This explains why procrastination feels satisfying for a short time. Delaying difficult work removes pressure temporarily. Unfortunately, the pressure usually returns stronger than before. Discipline reverses this pattern. It accepts temporary discomfort to create lasting relief. Finishing an important project early may feel demanding today, but tomorrow begins with greater freedom. Saving money now limits pleasure for the moment, yet future choices become less stressful. The disciplined life often exchanges short-term comfort for long-term peace. Daily routines quietly reveal personal priorities more accurately than spoken ambitions. Almost everyone has impressive goals. Fewer people have daily behaviors that support those goals. Your calendar tells a more honest story than your dreams. Your repeated actions reveal what truly matters. This realization is not meant to create guilt. It creates awareness. Once awareness develops, intentional change becomes possible. Small adjustments repeated consistently eventually become part of your character. Character is not built through occasional heroic moments. It grows through ordinary mornings, ordinary afternoons, and ordinary evenings where small choices continue aligning with meaningful values. Perhaps the greatest gift of discipline is freedom from emotional unpredictability. When every decision depends on how you feel, life becomes unstable because emotions naturally rise and fall. When your actions depend on clear principles instead, stability begins replacing uncertainty. You still experience happiness, frustration, excitement, disappointment, and doubt, because those emotions belong to every human life. The difference is that they no longer control your direction. They become passengers rather than drivers. There will always be another reason to postpone what matters. There will always be another excuse that sounds believable in the moment. Yet every ordinary day quietly asks the same important question without raising its voice. When your feelings and your values move in different directions, which one deserves to decide who you become? Chapter 2. Build simple routines that strengthen self-control every single day. The strongest form of self-control is rarely displayed during dramatic moments. It is built quietly through routines so ordinary that other people barely notice them. A person who consistently puts their keys in the same place wastes less mental energy searching for them. Someone who prepares tomorrow's clothes before going to bed removes one small decision from the next morning. A worker who begins each day by reviewing the 3 most important tasks creates direction before distractions appear. None of these actions seem remarkable on their own, yet together they shape a mind that becomes increasingly dependable. Self-control grows stronger when life contains fewer unnecessary decisions. Every routine becomes a silent agreement between your present self and the person you intend to become. Many people think routines make life boring because they confuse routine with repetition without purpose. There is a meaningful difference. Mindless repetition happens without intention. A purposeful routine exists because it supports something valuable. An athlete stretches before training, not because stretching is exciting, but because it prepares the body for better performance. A musician practices basic techniques long after mastering them because consistency protects skill. A thoughtful parent reads to a child every evening because small moments accumulate into lasting trust. The routine itself is simple, but its effect reaches far beyond the few minutes it occupies each day. Purpose transforms ordinary actions into meaningful investments. Behavioral psychology offers an important explanation for why routines work so well. The human brain constantly looks for patterns that reduce mental effort. Every repeated action eventually becomes easier because the brain creates efficient pathways for familiar behavior. This process saves energy, allowing attention to focus elsewhere. The same mechanism explains both helpful and harmful habits. Reaching for your phone every idle moment becomes automatic through repetition. Drinking water first thing in the morning can become equally automatic. Your brain does not judge whether a habit serves your future. It simply strengthens whatever behavior you repeat. That means every small routine is teaching your mind what to expect tomorrow. This is why dramatic life changes often fail. People become inspired and attempt to transform everything at once. They decide to wake up earlier, exercise intensely, change their diet, read every night, eliminate distractions, learn a new skill, and organize every part of their life in a single week. Their enthusiasm is genuine, but their plan ignores how the mind adapts. Every new routine requires attention before it becomes natural. Too many changes compete for limited mental resources. Eventually, exhaustion replaces excitement, and old behaviors quietly return. Sustainable growth usually begins with one reliable practice, repeated until it feels almost effortless. Strength develops through stability, not overload. Think about someone who wants to become more focused at work. They may believe concentration depends entirely on willpower, yet their daily routine tells a different story. They check messages before starting important tasks. Notifications interrupt every few minutes. Meetings scatter their attention throughout the day. Lunch happens whenever there is time. By evening, meaningful work feels impossible because mental energy has been spent responding instead of creating. A simple routine can change this experience. Beginning each morning with 90 uninterrupted minutes of focused work before opening unnecessary messages gradually teaches the brain when deep attention is expected. Over time, concentration arrives with less resistance because the routine has become familiar. Morning routines receive significant attention, but the principle extends far beyond the first hour of the day. Evening routines often determine tomorrow's quality before tomorrow even begins. A person who spends the last hour before bed moving between endless entertainment, unfinished work, and anxious thoughts carries that mental clutter into sleep. Another person who dims the lights, prepares for the following day, writes down lingering concerns, and ends the evening with quiet reading creates a different emotional state. Neither routine eliminates life's challenges, but one prepares the mind for recovery while the other prolongs stimulation. Self-control becomes easier when rest receives the same intentional care as productivity. There is another reason routines strengthen discipline. They reduce the influence of unpredictable emotions. On difficult days, feelings naturally fluctuate. Confidence rises and falls. Patience becomes thinner. Motivation disappears without warning. If productive behavior depends entirely on emotional readiness, progress becomes inconsistent. A well-established routine provides direction even when emotions remain unsettled. You may not feel enthusiastic about exercising, but your shoes are already by the door. You may not feel eager to study, but your notebook waits on the desk at the same time each evening. Familiar patterns gently carry you forward until action becomes easier than hesitation. Many people underestimate the emotional comfort that healthy routines provide during stressful periods. Uncertainty places enormous pressure on the mind because it forces constant decision-making. When life becomes unpredictable through financial challenges, relationship difficulties, health concerns, or career changes, familiar routines offer stability. Preparing breakfast, taking a daily walk, writing in a journal, or cleaning a workspace may appear insignificant compared to larger problems. Yet, these repeated actions quietly remind the mind that not everything is out of control. They create islands of order inside seasons of uncertainty. Psychological resilience often grows from these dependable moments rather than extraordinary achievements. It is also important to understand that routines should support life rather than imprison it. Some people become so attached to perfect schedules that any interruption creates frustration. A delayed flight ruins the entire day. An unexpected visitor disrupts productivity. A missed workout feels like complete failure. This rigid thinking weakens self-control because it ties emotional stability to external circumstances. A healthy routine remains flexible enough to adapt without collapsing. Missing one day does not erase months of consistent behavior. The goal is not perfection. The goal is returning to your routine quickly, instead of allowing one interruption to become a permanent excuse. Relationships benefit from routines in ways that are often overlooked. Regular family dinners create opportunities for honest conversations. A weekly phone call to a parent strengthens connection without requiring grand gestures. Setting aside uninterrupted time with a partner communicates care more clearly than occasional expensive gifts. Trust grows through repeated reliability. People remember who consistently shows up, who listens attentively, and who honors simple commitments. These habits quietly shape the emotional climate of every meaningful relationship. Self-control is not only about resisting temptation, it is also about consistently choosing behaviors that strengthen the people and values you care about most. One practical question deserves honest reflection. Does your current routine make good decisions easier or harder? Consider how your day begins, how you transition between responsibilities, how you respond to stress, and how you end the evening. Every repeated pattern either supports your future or quietly works against it. Many frustrations that appear to require greater discipline actually require better structure. A cluttered workspace invites distraction. Irregular sleep weakens patience. Constant multitasking fragments attention. Improving the routine often solves problems that willpower alone struggles to overcome. Small rituals also carry symbolic power. Making your bed each morning does not transform your life because the bed looks neat. It matters because you begin the day by completing a task you chose instead of reacting to circumstances. Filling a water bottle before leaving home is more than preparation. It reflects intentional thinking. Spending 5 minutes reviewing priorities before work signals that your attention belongs to what matters most. These actions seem too small to influence identity, yet identity develops through repeated evidence. Every completed routine quietly reinforces the belief that you are someone who follows through. Over time, routines begin to protect you from impulses that once felt overwhelming. The person who automatically saves part of every paycheck no longer debates every purchase. The individual who reads every evening spends less time wondering how to use spare moments. Someone who exercises regularly experiences movement as a normal part of life rather than a difficult decision. Self-control has not necessarily become stronger through constant struggle. It has become easier because useful behaviors require less conscious effort. The routine has taken over where willpower once carried the burden. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when your days contain dependable rhythms. You stop questioning whether you are capable because your actions answer the question repeatedly. The mind gradually relaxes when it knows what comes next. That reliability extends beyond productivity. It influences how you speak, how you manage pressure, how you care for your health, and how you treat the people around you. A life shaped by thoughtful routines does not become smaller, it becomes more intentional. The remarkable truth is that most lasting change does not arrive through one extraordinary decision. It appears through ordinary actions repeated until they become part of who you are. If your daily routines are already shaping your future, whether you notice them or not, what quiet pattern are you practicing today that your future self will eventually call your character? Chapter 3. Replace excuses with responsibility through consistent personal actions. Every person tells stories about why life looks the way it does. Some of those stories are accurate. Others quietly protect the mind from discomfort. An excuse often begins as an attempt to explain a setback, but over time it can become a permanent way of thinking. It shifts attention away from the one place where change is still possible. Responsibility works differently. It does not deny that circumstances matter. It simply asks a more useful question. Given the reality of this situation, what can I do next? That question may not remove every obstacle, but it immediately restores something valuable that excuses often take away. It restores personal influence. The moment you focus on your next action, instead of your perfect explanation, your energy begins moving toward progress rather than remaining trapped in frustration. The human mind naturally protects its sense of identity. Psychologists have long observed that people tend to explain success and failure in different ways. When something goes well, it feels comfortable to believe that personal effort caused the outcome. When something goes poorly, the mind often searches outside itself for reasons. This tendency reduces emotional pain in the short term because it protects self-esteem. Yet, when this pattern becomes automatic, it creates a hidden cost. If every disappointment belongs entirely to someone else, then every opportunity for growth also belongs somewhere else. Responsibility is uncomfortable because it requires looking honestly at your own contribution. At the same time, it is liberating because it reminds you that your choices still matter even when circumstances are imperfect. Think about two employees who receive the same difficult performance review. One spends the next several weeks talking about unfair management, impossible expectations, and office politics. Some of those concerns may even be valid. The other employee experiences the same disappointment, but asks a different question. Which part of this feedback can actually help me improve? That person begins listening more carefully during meetings, organizes projects more effectively, and communicates more clearly with coworkers. Both individuals experienced the same event. Their futures begin separating because their attention moves in different directions. One becomes increasingly skilled, the other becomes increasingly convinced that improvement depends entirely on external change. Responsibility should never be confused with unnecessary self-blame. There are events in life that no amount of preparation can prevent. Illness, economic hardship, betrayal, accidents, and unexpected loss can affect even the most disciplined person. Healthy responsibility does not demand that you accept guilt for everything that happens. It asks you to accept ownership over your response. This distinction protects both honesty and resilience. You are not responsible for every challenge that enters your life. You are responsible for deciding what kind of person you become while facing it. That decision remains available even when many other choices have been taken away. Excuses often sound convincing because they contain pieces of truth. Someone says there is no time to exercise while working long hours and caring for family responsibilities. Another says learning new skills is impossible because financial pressure leaves little room for education. A third insists meaningful relationships are difficult because trust has been broken before. These situations deserve compassion, not dismissal. Yet responsibility gently asks whether the explanation has become larger than the possibility. Perhaps exercise begins with 15 minutes instead of an hour. Perhaps learning happens through free resources during short breaks. Perhaps trust is rebuilt slowly through healthy boundaries rather than abandoned completely. The circumstances remain challenging, but the focus shifts from limitation to action. There is an important psychological reason why excuses become habits. Every excuse provides immediate emotional relief. When you explain why something cannot be done, you temporarily remove the pressure to act. The relief feels satisfying because uncertainty disappears. Unfortunately, the underlying problem usually remains. Days become months, and the original challenge grows more complicated. Responsibility often feels heavier in the beginning because it requires effort before relief arrives. Over time, however, that effort creates confidence. Each completed action becomes evidence that you are capable of influencing your own direction. Confidence built through responsibility lasts longer than comfort created through avoidance. Personal responsibility also changes how you speak to yourself. Listen carefully to the language people use during difficult moments. One person says, "Nothing ever works for me." Another says, "I haven't found the right approach yet." The difference appears small, yet it shapes behavior in powerful ways. The first statement closes possibilities because it suggests the outcome has already been decided. The second keeps the mind searching for solutions. Your internal language influences where your attention goes. If your words repeatedly emphasize helplessness, your brain becomes more likely to notice reasons to stop trying. If your words encourage problem solving, your attention naturally begins identifying opportunities that were previously overlooked. Relationships provide daily opportunities to practice responsibility in ways that are both challenging and rewarding. During disagreements, it is easy to focus entirely on the other person's mistakes. Most conflicts contain enough misunderstanding for each individual to defend their position convincingly. Responsibility introduces a different habit. Instead of asking only what the other person should have done differently, you ask what you could have communicated more clearly, what assumptions you made, or where your own emotions influenced the conversation. This approach does not guarantee agreement, but it increases maturity. People who consistently examine their own behavior often resolve conflicts more effectively because they improve the one part of the relationship they can directly control. Responsibility becomes especially valuable after failure. Many people treat failure as proof that they lack ability. Others protect themselves by blaming every outside factor. Neither response encourages meaningful growth. A more useful approach examines results with curiosity instead of judgment. If a business idea fails, responsibility asks whether the planning was realistic, whether customer needs were understood, or whether financial decisions could improve next time. If a health goal falls apart, responsibility explores daily habits, sleep quality, consistency, and preparation rather than relying on guilt alone. Honest evaluation transforms disappointment into practical knowledge. Each mistake becomes less frightening because it now contains information instead of only regret. There is also a quiet connection between responsibility and freedom that many people overlook. At first glance, responsibility appears restrictive because it asks more from you. In reality, it expands your freedom by increasing your influence. A person who takes responsibility for personal finances gains more future choices than someone who ignores spending habits. Someone who accepts responsibility for learning new skills becomes more adaptable when industries change. A person who consistently strengthens emotional self-control experiences greater freedom during conflict because reactions no longer dictate behavior. Every responsible action increases the number of possibilities available tomorrow. One of the simplest ways to replace excuses is by reducing the distance between intention and action. Instead of promising that you will completely reorganize your life next month, identify one meaningful behavior you can complete today. Send the email you have delayed. Apologize sincerely if you know you caused harm. Spend 30 focused minutes on an important project instead of waiting for the perfect afternoon. Prepare a healthy meal instead of promising that your diet will begin next week. Responsibility grows through completed actions, not ambitious declarations. Small follow-through gradually changes how you see yourself. Your identity begins aligning with evidence rather than hope alone. Another important shift occurs when you stop comparing your journey to someone else's circumstances. Comparison often creates excuses because every life contains different advantages and different burdens. Looking only at another person's visible success rarely reveals the unseen effort behind it. Responsibility asks you to measure progress against your own previous behavior instead. Are you becoming more reliable than you were 6 months ago? Do you recover from setbacks more quickly? Have your daily decisions become more intentional? These questions encourage growth because they focus attention where improvement is actually possible. There will always be reasons why a goal feels difficult. Some of those reasons are real, some are temporary, some exist only because fear has learned to speak in practical language. Responsibility does not require pretending that the road is easy. It asks you to keep moving even when the road is uneven. Every meaningful life contains moments when no perfect option exists. In those moments, waiting for ideal conditions often becomes another form of delay. Taking the next honest step, however small, keeps your character moving in the right direction. As this way of thinking becomes part of your daily life, something subtle begins to change. You spend less time defending your current situation and more time improving it. Conversations become less focused on blame and more focused on solutions. Challenges still appear, disappointments still arrive, and unexpected obstacles still interrupt carefully made plans. Yet your first instinct slowly shifts away from asking who is responsible for the problem and toward asking what responsibility is now inviting you to become willing to accept. Chapter 4. Develop patience while pursuing meaningful goals without seeking instant results. One of the quietest tests of discipline is not whether you can begin something meaningful, but whether you can continue when visible progress seems slow. Most people can stay committed for a few days when excitement is fresh and possibilities feel unlimited. The greater challenge begins after the novelty disappears. The work still demands attention, but the emotional reward becomes less immediate. Improvement arrives so gradually that it almost escapes notice. This is the point where impatience begins speaking. It asks whether the effort is worth it. It questions whether another path might produce faster results. It quietly suggests that perhaps nothing is changing at all. Patience answers differently. It reminds you that many of life's most valuable outcomes develop beneath the surface long before they become visible. The human brain naturally prefers immediate rewards over distant ones. Behavioral psychologists describe this tendency as a present-focused bias. A small reward available today often feels more attractive than a much greater reward waiting months from now. This pattern influences countless daily decisions. Spending money feels easier than saving it. Entertainment feels more appealing than studying. Sleeping a little longer seems more satisfying than exercising before work. These choices are not simply failures of character. They reflect the way the mind has evolved to value what is immediately available. Modern life, however, often rewards those who can consistently invest in outcomes that cannot yet be seen. Patience becomes a practical skill because it allows present actions to serve future goals instead of present emotions alone. Meaningful goals almost always require a period where effort appears to exceed results. A person learning a new language may study every evening without noticing significant improvement for weeks. Someone developing professional expertise may spend years practicing before receiving greater responsibility or recognition. A couple working to rebuild trust after a difficult season may experience many ordinary conversations before genuine closeness begins to return. During these periods, progress rarely feels dramatic, yet invisible growth is still taking place. New neural pathways are forming. Skills are becoming more automatic. Confidence is quietly developing through repetition. Relationships are being strengthened through consistent behavior. The absence of immediate evidence does not mean the process has stopped. Many people abandon worthwhile goals because they expect progress to feel steady and obvious. Reality is often far less predictable. Improvement tends to arrive unevenly. You may struggle with the same challenge for weeks before suddenly noticing that what once felt difficult has become almost natural. This pattern appears in physical training, creative work, education, emotional maturity, and professional development. The breakthrough often seems sudden, but it is usually the result of many ordinary days that looked unremarkable while they were happening. Patience allows you to continue through those ordinary days without demanding constant proof that your effort is working. There is another reason impatience becomes so persuasive. It creates the illusion of productivity by encouraging constant change. Someone starts exercising, then switches to a different program after 2 weeks because results seem slow. They begin learning a skill, but quickly move to another because the first one feels difficult. They accept a new opportunity, then immediately begin searching for something better before giving themselves enough time to grow. Constant movement can feel like progress because it creates activity. Yet activity without consistency often produces very little lasting development. Patience is not passive waiting. It is disciplined persistence directed toward a meaningful objective long enough for genuine progress to emerge. Consider the experience of planting a tree. During the early stages, much of its growth happens where no one can see it. Roots extend through the soil, creating stability before significant height appears above ground. If someone judged the tree only by what was visible during those first weeks, they might wrongly assume that nothing important was happening. Human development often follows a similar pattern. Before noticeable achievements appear, unseen qualities are strengthening. Judgment improves through repeated decisions. Emotional resilience develops through ordinary disappointments. Self-control grows through daily choices that no one applauds. The visible result eventually attracts attention, but it rests on a foundation built quietly over time. Patience also changes your relationship with comparison. When people constantly measure their progress against others, they often become discouraged because they see only the destination, not the journey. One coworker earns a promotion, a friend starts a successful business. Someone else appears healthier, more confident, or financially secure. Without context, comparison creates the impression that meaningful change happens quickly for everyone except you. In reality, Every visible accomplishment contains years of unseen preparation, repeated mistakes, gradual learning, and disciplined effort. Patience reminds you that another person's timeline does not define your own. Your responsibility is not to match someone else's pace. It is to remain faithful to your own process. Work offers many opportunities to practice this perspective. A new employee may want immediate recognition, yet trust is usually earned through consistent reliability rather than one impressive performance. Showing up prepared, communicating honestly, meeting deadlines, and improving steadily often matter more over time than occasional moments of brilliance. Employers, colleagues, and clients gradually build confidence in people whose behavior remains dependable across changing circumstances. Patience encourages you to value long-term credibility instead of short-term applause. That reputation becomes one of the most valuable assets you can carry into any profession. The same principle applies to personal confidence. Many people hope confidence will appear before they attempt something difficult. More often, confidence develops after repeated exposure to situations that once felt uncomfortable. Speaking in front of a group becomes easier after many presentations. Honest conversations become less intimidating after they are practiced with sincerity. Leading others feels more natural after accepting responsibility consistently. Patience allows confidence to grow at its proper pace. It recognizes that emotional security is usually earned through experience rather than granted in advance. Relationships provide another reminder that meaningful outcomes cannot be rushed. Genuine trust develops through repeated honesty, reliability, and respect over time. A single thoughtful conversation may strengthen a connection, but lasting closeness grows from many ordinary interactions. Parents shape their children's sense of security through years of daily presence. Friendships deepen through consistent care rather than occasional grand gestures. Couples build lasting partnerships through countless small decisions to listen, support, and remain dependable. Attempts to force intimacy often create disappointment because relationships mature according to shared experience, not personal urgency. Patience also transforms the way setbacks are interpreted. When expectations focus entirely on immediate success, every obstacle feels like evidence that the goal may be impossible. A patient perspective sees difficulty differently. A delayed opportunity becomes additional time to improve. Constructive criticism becomes information rather than rejection. Temporary failure becomes part of the learning process instead of the final outcome. This mindset protects emotional energy because it separates current circumstances from permanent conclusions. You stop assuming that today's result defines tomorrow's possibilities. There is wisdom in learning to measure progress by actions rather than emotions. Some days you will feel energetic and optimistic. Other days the work will seem repetitive or demanding. If emotional satisfaction becomes the primary measure of success, patience becomes almost impossible because feelings naturally fluctuate. Instead, ask whether you completed the work that truly mattered today. Did you practice the skill you want to develop? Did you keep the promise you made to yourself? Did your choices align with your values, even when enthusiasm was absent? These questions create stability because they focus on behavior instead of temporary emotional states. Modern technology has quietly increased the challenge of practicing patience. Information arrives instantly, messages are delivered within seconds, entertainment appears whenever boredom begins. Shopping, communication, and countless services have been designed to minimize waiting. These conveniences provide real benefits, yet they also shape expectations. The mind gradually begins expecting every meaningful result to arrive with similar speed. Personal growth refuses to follow that pattern. Character cannot be downloaded. wisdom cannot be accelerated through convenience. Emotional maturity still develops through lived experience, reflection, and repeated practice. Some of life's most valuable achievements continue to require time because time itself is part of the teacher. A useful way to strengthen patience is to become more attentive to the process than the outcome. A writer who focuses only on publishing may become discouraged by slow progress. A writer who values improving each day's work discovers satisfaction in the craft itself. Someone pursuing better health finds greater consistency when daily movement, nourishing meals, and restful sleep become meaningful regardless of immediate changes in appearance. This shift does not eliminate ambition. It grounds ambition in behaviors that remain within your control. Outcomes matter, but they are influenced by many factors. Your daily effort remains the part you can always choose. There is also quiet peace in accepting that not every worthwhile goal unfolds according to your preferred schedule. Life includes unexpected delays, changing circumstances, and opportunities that appear only after long periods of preparation. Impatience often interprets these moments as wasted time. Patience asks a different question. What qualities can this season develop that a quicker path never could? Endurance, humility, adaptability, careful judgment, and emotional steadiness often emerge only because progress required waiting. The delay itself becomes part of your education. As your perspective gradually changes, you begin noticing that the people who achieve lasting success are rarely those who demand immediate rewards. They are often the individuals who continue showing up with quiet consistency while others become distracted by faster but less meaningful alternatives. They understand that lasting progress rarely announces itself day by day. It reveals itself only after enough ordinary days have been connected by faithful effort. When the results you hope for remain just beyond your view, and the work still asks for your attention with no guarantee of immediate reward, will you judge your progress only by what you can already see, or will you trust that the person you are becoming is growing long before the world has any reason to notice? Chapter 5. Strengthen focus by removing distractions from your daily environment. Your ability to focus is shaped long before you consciously decide where to place your attention. Every environment quietly sends signals to your mind. A cluttered desk suggests unfinished work. A phone within reach silently invites interruption. A television playing in the background competes for mental space even when you believe you are ignoring it. These influences are so familiar that they often become invisible. Many people assume they struggle with focus because they lack discipline, when in reality they spend each day surrounded by conditions that constantly divide their attention. Before strengthening concentration, it helps to recognize that attention is not simply a matter of willpower. It is also a response to the world you have built around yourself. The human brain evolved to notice change. Thousands of years ago, this tendency helped people survive. A sudden movement in the distance could signal danger. An unfamiliar sound demanded immediate awareness. Remaining alert increased the chances of staying alive. That same mental system still operates today, but the environment has changed dramatically. Instead of watching for predators, your attention is pulled toward vibrating phones, incoming messages, flashing notifications, headlines, advertisements, and endless streams of new information. Each interruption promises something that feels important in the moment. The brain responds automatically because novelty activates curiosity. The challenge is that modern distractions rarely threaten survival, yet they consume the same attention that meaningful work requires. One interruption rarely seems significant. Looking at a message for 30 seconds appears harmless. Opening a social media app during a short break feels innocent. Responding to one unnecessary email before returning to an important project seems efficient. The hidden cost appears afterward. Once attention has shifted, the mind often needs several minutes to fully reconnect with the original task. During that transition, concentration becomes weaker and mistakes become more likely. This pattern, repeated many times throughout the day, quietly fragments your thinking. You may spend 8 hours at work while completing only a few hours of truly focused effort. The problem is not always the amount of time available. It is the number of times your attention is broken. Many people believe they are good at multitasking because they can perform several activities at once. Psychology consistently suggests something different. The brain usually switches rapidly between tasks rather than processing them simultaneously. Every switch carries a small mental cost. Reading while checking messages reduces comprehension. Listening during a meeting while responding to emails weakens both conversations. Trying to solve a complex problem while frequently glancing at your phone makes deep thinking almost impossible. The mind performs best when it can remain fully engaged with one meaningful activity before moving deliberately to the next. Protecting that uninterrupted space becomes one of the greatest advantages in a distracted world. Your physical surroundings influence your mental state more than you may realize. Consider the difference between entering a clean workspace prepared only for today's priorities and sitting down at a desk covered with unfinished projects, unrelated papers, unopened mail, and unnecessary objects. The clutter does not simply occupy physical space, it creates additional decisions. Your attention repeatedly notices things that remain incomplete. Each item quietly competes for mental resources. A simple environment reduces this competition. It allows your mind to direct energy toward the work that matters, instead of constantly responding to visual reminders of everything else demanding attention. This principle extends beyond work. The environment inside your home influences daily habits as well. If healthy food is prepared and easily available, making nourishing choices requires less effort. If books remain visible while entertainment devices dominate every room, one activity naturally becomes more likely than the other. If exercise equipment is accessible, movement becomes easier to begin. If everything needed for a valuable habit requires searching through clutter or overcoming unnecessary obstacles, resistance quietly increases. The environment never makes decisions for you, but it consistently influences which decisions feel easier. Small adjustments often produce meaningful changes because they reduce friction before willpower is required. Digital environments deserve the same careful attention as physical ones. Many people organize their homes while allowing their devices to become endless sources of interruption. Notifications appear throughout the day without asking whether the information is truly urgent. Applications compete aggressively for attention because attention has become valuable. Every alert suggests that something deserves immediate response. Yet very few notifications improve the quality of your life simply because they arrive instantly. Choosing when to engage with information is different from allowing information to choose when it engages with you. Turning off unnecessary notifications, creating scheduled times to check messages, and keeping distracting applications away from your primary workspace are not acts of isolation. They are decisions about protecting your most limited resource. Attention is limited because mental energy is limited. Every decision, conversation, and challenge draws from the same reserve of cognitive effort. This explains why people often make poorer choices late in the day. After hours of solving problems, responding to requests, and adapting to changing situations, the mind naturally becomes tired. At that point, distractions become even more appealing because they demand less effort than meaningful work. Recognizing this pattern allows you to schedule your most important tasks during periods when attention is naturally stronger. Many successful routines are built around this understanding rather than around endless hours of effort. Quality of attention often matters far more than quantity of time. Relationships are also affected by the way attention is managed. One of the greatest gifts you can offer another person is your complete presence. Yet divided attention has become increasingly common. Conversations are interrupted by checking phones. Meals are shared while scrolling through endless information. Important discussions compete with background entertainment. These habits may seem minor, but they communicate something powerful. They suggest that the person before you is sharing your attention with countless other demands. Choosing to put away distractions during meaningful conversations strengthens trust because it tells the other person that they matter more than whatever else is asking for your focus at that moment. Another overlooked distraction comes from unresolved mental clutter. Not every interruption exists outside your mind. Sometimes attention drifts because unfinished decisions continue demanding internal space. A conversation that needs to happen, a financial concern left unaddressed, or a task repeatedly postponed can quietly follow you throughout the day. Your mind revisits these concerns because it wants resolution. Writing them down, making a clear plan, or taking one meaningful step towards solving them often reduces their power over your attention. Clarity creates mental space. Uncertainty continually pulls attention away from the present moment. Fear also disguises itself as distraction more often than people recognize. Someone sits down to begin an important project, but suddenly feels an urgent need to organize files, answer messages, or complete less significant tasks. These activities create the appearance of productivity while avoiding the discomfort of work that truly matters. The deeper issue is rarely poor time management. It is often fear of failure, fear of criticism, or fear of discovering personal limitations. Distractions become emotionally attractive because they offer immediate relief from uncertainty. Honest self-awareness allows you to ask whether your current activity is genuinely important or simply more comfortable than the task you are avoiding. Creating periods of intentional silence can strengthen focus in unexpected ways. Modern life surrounds people with continuous stimulation. Music plays during commutes. Podcasts fill quiet moments. Notifications arrive during breaks. Television continues in the background while meals are prepared. Constant input leaves little room for reflection. Silence initially feels uncomfortable because the mind has become accustomed to endless activity. With time, however, quiet allows deeper thinking to emerge. Problems become easier to understand. Creative ideas appear naturally. Emotions become clearer because they are no longer buried beneath continuous noise. Protecting moments without constant stimulation helps restore the mind's ability to sustain meaningful attention. It is also worth remembering that focus is strengthened through practice. Just as physical muscles grow stronger through repeated effort, attention becomes more stable when it is exercised intentionally. Beginning with shorter periods of uninterrupted concentration and gradually extending them trains the mind to remain engaged for longer stretches. During those sessions, every temptation to check a notification or switch tasks becomes an opportunity to strengthen discipline. Each moment of returning your attention to what truly matters reinforces the habit of choosing purpose over impulse. There is freedom in accepting that you cannot give equal attention to everything. Every meaningful commitment requires saying no to something else. Choosing one priority naturally means postponing another. This is not a sign of limitation. It is the reality of a finite life. The people who accomplish meaningful work are rarely those who attempt to do everything. More often, they become skilled at protecting what deserves their best attention while allowing less important distractions to remain unanswered. Their focus becomes a reflection of their values. As this habit develops, your days begin to feel different. You finish important work with greater satisfaction because your attention remained fully engaged. Conversations become richer because people sense your presence. Decisions become clearer because your thinking is less fragmented. The mind grows calmer when it no longer reacts to every passing distraction. You discover that focus is not created by forcing yourself to concentrate harder. It is often revealed when everything unnecessary stops competing for your attention. Every object on your desk, every notification on your screen, every habit that fills your day, and every commitment that claims your time is quietly asking for a place in your awareness. If your attention ultimately shapes your life, what deserves to remain in your environment, and what has been quietly stealing the future you have been trying to build. Chapter 6. Face discomfort willingly because lasting growth requires steady commitment. Discomfort has a way of announcing itself long before meaningful progress does. It appears in the quiet moments before you begin something difficult. It shows up when you are about to speak honestly, attempt a new skill, admit a mistake, or continue working after your initial enthusiasm has faded. Most people assume that this feeling is a warning to stop. In reality, it is often a sign that you are approaching the edge of what is familiar. Growth rarely asks whether you feel ready. It asks whether you are willing to continue, even when comfort is no longer available. The person who understands this no longer treats discomfort as an enemy. Instead, they begin recognizing it as a natural companion to every worthwhile pursuit. The human mind is designed to seek stability. Predictable situations require less energy and create fewer risks. From a biological perspective, this tendency once helped people survive uncertain environments. Familiar routines reduced unnecessary danger. Today, however, the greatest opportunities for personal growth often exist outside familiar patterns. Learning a new profession, rebuilding health, improving communication, developing leadership, or changing long-standing habits all require stepping into situations where certainty is limited. The same brain that protects you from unnecessary risk can also discourage necessary growth. Understanding this tension changes the way you interpret your own resistance. Feeling uncomfortable does not automatically mean you are making the wrong choice. Sometimes it means you are leaving behind the version of yourself that can no longer carry you where you want to go. Many people spend years trying to eliminate discomfort before taking action. They wait until they feel confident before applying for a new opportunity. They wait until fear disappears before having an important conversation. They wait until everything feels organized before beginning a meaningful project. Unfortunately, these conditions rarely arrive on their own. Confidence grows because action happens first. Clarity develops because experience gradually replaces uncertainty. Emotional readiness is often the result of commitment rather than its starting point. Waiting for perfect comfort can quietly become a lifelong delay. The people who make lasting progress usually discover that courage is built by repeatedly moving through discomfort instead of negotiating with it. One reason discomfort feels so persuasive is that it speaks in reasonable language. It rarely tells you to give up completely. Instead, it suggests waiting until tomorrow. It encourages one more week of preparation, one more course, one more opinion, or one more attempt to avoid possible embarrassment. These thoughts sound practical because they contain enough logic to seem responsible. Yet if the same pattern continues month after month, it becomes clear that the issue is no longer preparation, it is avoidance. Honest reflection requires asking whether your delay is creating genuine improvement or simply protecting you from temporary emotional strain. Consider someone beginning their first leadership role. During the first few weeks, every important decision feels heavy. Giving constructive feedback feels uncomfortable. Speaking confidently during meetings requires conscious effort. Handling disagreements creates anxiety because the outcome is uncertain. None of these experiences suggest that the person lacks potential. They simply reveal that the role demands skills that have not yet become natural. If discomfort is interpreted as evidence of failure, growth stops early. If discomfort is accepted as part of learning, competence gradually develops. Months later, situations that once seemed intimidating become ordinary because repeated experience has changed both ability and perspective. The same principle appears in physical training. Muscles become stronger by adapting to carefully applied resistance. Without challenge, the body has no reason to develop greater capacity. Personal character follows a similar pattern. Patience grows through waiting when immediate answers are unavailable. Emotional stability grows through responding thoughtfully during stressful situations. Integrity grows through choosing honesty when dishonesty would be easier. Discipline grows by keeping commitments even when convenience suggests another option. None of these qualities emerge from comfort alone. They are strengthened because life repeatedly invites you to carry more than you believed possible. Psychology also teaches that the mind tends to exaggerate anticipated discomfort. Before making a difficult phone call, beginning an unfamiliar task, or entering a challenging conversation, people often imagine outcomes that are far worse than reality. This happens because uncertainty leaves room for the imagination to fill in missing details. The brain prepares for potential threats by creating possibilities, many of which never occur. Once the action begins, reality usually becomes more manageable than expectation. This is why beginning is often the hardest part. Action replaces imagined fear with actual experience, and actual experience is frequently less overwhelming than the stories the mind creates beforehand. There is an important difference between harmful suffering and purposeful discomfort. Healthy growth never requires accepting abuse, neglecting well-being, or ignoring legitimate warning signs. Wisdom involves recognizing when difficulty serves development and when it causes unnecessary harm. Purposeful discomfort has direction. It exists because you are learning, improving, recovering, building, or contributing to something meaningful. Harmful suffering leaves you diminished without creating growth. Understanding this distinction prevents discipline from becoming self-punishment. The goal is not to seek pain for its own sake. The goal is to become willing to accept the temporary difficulty that meaningful progress naturally requires. Relationships offer countless opportunities to practice this willingness. Honest conversations often begin with discomfort because truth carries emotional weight. Apologizing sincerely requires humility. Setting healthy boundaries may disappoint people who benefited from your silence. Listening without immediately defending yourself can challenge your pride, yet avoiding these moments rarely protects relationships in the long run. Unspoken resentment grows quietly, misunderstandings deepen, trust weakens when important issues remain hidden. Choosing temporary discomfort through honest communication often creates lasting peace because problems are addressed instead of postponed. Many people unknowingly train themselves to escape discomfort through constant distraction. The moment boredom appears, they reach for entertainment. When loneliness surfaces, they fill every quiet moment with noise. If anxiety begins rising, they immediately search for something that provides quick relief. These habits reduce emotional tension temporarily, but they also prevent the development of resilience. Every feeling that is instantly escaped remains unfamiliar and intimidating. Spending occasional time with difficult emotions without immediately reacting to them teaches an important lesson. Feelings change, they rise, they settle, and they pass. You become less controlled by them because you no longer believe every uncomfortable emotion demands immediate action. Steady commitment becomes especially important after the initial excitement fades. Every meaningful goal eventually enters a quieter phase where progress depends less on enthusiasm and more on consistency. This is where many people begin searching for new motivation because they mistake ordinary effort for failure. In reality, ordinary effort is often where the deepest transformation occurs. Showing up on a day when nothing feels remarkable builds a different kind of strength than performing well during moments of inspiration. Quiet consistency reshapes identity because it proves that your values remain stronger than changing emotions. Think about the difference between people who abandon every challenge that becomes difficult and those who continue despite uncertainty. The second group does not necessarily possess greater talent. They often share the same fears, doubts, and moments of frustration. The difference lies in their interpretation of those experiences. They expect difficulty rather than feeling surprised by it. Because discomfort is anticipated, it no longer carries the power to convince them that something has gone wrong. They continue working because challenge has become part of the process instead of evidence against it. Another practical way to strengthen this mindset is to stop asking whether a task feels comfortable and begin asking whether it is meaningful. Comfort changes throughout the day. Meaning remains more stable. Preparing for an important examination may feel difficult, yet it serves a valuable purpose. Exercising after a long day requires effort, but it supports long-term health. Saving money instead of making an impulsive purchase may not satisfy immediate desires, yet it creates future stability. When meaning becomes the guiding principle, temporary discomfort loses much of its influence because it is no longer the primary factor in decision-making. There is quiet confidence that develops when you repeatedly discover you can handle more than you once believed. Every completed challenge expands your understanding of yourself, the difficult conversation you finally had, the project you finished despite uncertainty, the habit you maintained through busy weeks, the fear you faced instead of avoiding. None of these moments change you because they are dramatic. They change you because they become evidence. Your mind begins trusting your ability to endure temporary discomfort without giving up. That trust becomes one of the strongest foundations for lasting discipline. Over time, your relationship with difficulty begins to change. Instead of asking why life feels demanding, you become more interested in what each challenge is asking you to develop. Instead of assuming resistance means retreat, you learn to pause and examine whether the discomfort is pointing toward meaningful growth. Not every hard path is the right one, but every worthwhile path will eventually become hard in some way. Life will continue presenting moments where comfort invites you to remain exactly as you are, while commitment quietly asks you to become someone more capable. When that invitation arrives again, which voice will shape the person you are still becoming? Chapter 7. Create reliable habits that continue during difficult, challenging seasons. Life rarely moves in a straight line. There are seasons when everything feels manageable, your energy is steady, your schedule is predictable, and your goals seem within reach. Then, often without much warning, life changes. A demanding project at work stretches your attention. A loved one needs your care. Financial pressure grows. Your health requires greater attention. A relationship enters a difficult period. During these moments, many habits quietly disappear because they were built only for ideal conditions. The true strength of a habit is not revealed when life feels easy. It is revealed when life becomes complicated and the habit remains. Reliable habits are not designed for perfect days. They are designed to survive imperfect ones. Many people unknowingly create routines that depend on favorable circumstances. They exercise only when they have abundant free time. They prepare healthy meals only when work is not stressful. They read only when they feel mentally refreshed. These routines function well until ordinary life becomes demanding. Once pressure increases, the entire structure begins to collapse. This often creates unnecessary frustration because people conclude they lack discipline. More often, the problem is that their habits were too fragile. They were built around convenience instead of resilience. A reliable habit is flexible enough to continue even when conditions are less than ideal. Behavioral psychology explains why difficult seasons disrupt behavior so easily. Stress changes how the brain allocates attention and energy. During challenging periods, mental resources become focused on solving immediate problems. Long-term goals naturally receive less attention because survival feels more urgent than improvement. This response is deeply human. The brain is attempting to protect you by concentrating on what appears most pressing. Yet if every healthy habit disappears whenever life becomes stressful, recovery becomes harder rather than easier. The very practices that strengthen emotional stability, physical health, and clear thinking are often abandoned at the exact moment they are needed most. This is why simplicity becomes one of the greatest strengths of a lasting habit. A routine that requires perfect timing, unlimited energy, expensive resources, or ideal circumstances carries hidden risk. A routine that can be completed almost anywhere with limited time and minimal preparation has a much greater chance of surviving life's inevitable interruptions. Someone who normally exercises for an hour may choose a 20-minute walk during a demanding week instead of doing nothing. A person who usually reads 30 pages may read 5 before sleeping when exhaustion sets in. The habit continues even though the intensity changes. Consistency matters more than maintaining the exact same performance every day. There is an important psychological benefit to protecting continuity. Every time you continue a positive habit during a difficult season, you reinforce your identity. You prove to yourself that your behavior is not entirely controlled by circumstances. The action may be smaller than usual, but it still sends a powerful message. It says that your values remain present even when life becomes unpredictable. This kind of evidence quietly strengthens self-trust. Over time, you stop thinking of yourself as someone who performs well only when everything goes according to plan. You begin seeing yourself as someone who adapts without abandoning what matters. Consider the experience of someone balancing work and family responsibilities while caring for an aging parent. Their schedule changes constantly. Unexpected appointments interrupt carefully planned days. Emotional energy is often limited. In such a season, maintaining every previous routine exactly as before may be unrealistic, yet completely abandoning healthy habits creates additional strain. Instead of expecting perfection, they adjust. They prepare simple, nutritious meals instead of elaborate ones. They spend a few quiet minutes reflecting each morning instead of an hour. They continue moving their body, even if the workout is shorter. These decisions may appear modest, yet they preserve stability during a time when many aspects of life feel uncertain. Reliable habits also reduce the emotional burden of starting over. Many people experience what psychologists sometimes describe as an all-or-nothing pattern. Missing several days of a positive routine leads them to believe the habit has failed completely. They tell themselves they will restart next Monday, next month, or after life becomes less busy. Unfortunately, the longer the interruption lasts, the more difficult returning becomes. A small habit maintained consistently prevents this cycle. It keeps the connection alive. Returning to full strength becomes easier because the routine never disappeared entirely. There is wisdom in preparing for difficult seasons before they arrive. Most people plan for success, but rarely plan for hardship. They assume tomorrow will offer the same energy, time, and focus available today. Reality often brings surprises. A useful question is not simply, what habit should I build? It is also, how will I protect this habit when life becomes complicated? Thinking ahead creates practical solutions. You identify simpler versions of important routines. You remove unnecessary obstacles. You decide in advance what the minimum acceptable action will be during demanding periods. Preparation reduces uncertainty because difficult moments no longer require creating new plans while under pressure. Relationships also benefit from dependable habits during challenging times. Stress often narrows attention until people become focused almost entirely on solving problems. Important relationships can unintentionally receive less care because urgent responsibilities dominate each day. Small, consistent actions protect connection. A brief conversation without distractions, a sincere message of appreciation, sitting together quietly after a long day, checking on a friend who has been struggling. These habits require little time, yet they remind people that they remain valued even when circumstances are difficult. Trust is strengthened not only through grand acts of support, but through steady presence when life becomes demanding. Another overlooked habit is protecting your inner dialogue during difficult seasons. Stress often encourages harsh self-criticism. People begin believing that temporary struggles define their entire character. They interpret reduced productivity as personal failure rather than a natural response to increased pressure. Reliable mental habits involve speaking to yourself with honesty instead of cruelty. You acknowledge the challenge without surrendering to hopelessness. You recognize limitations without abandoning responsibility. This balanced perspective protects emotional resilience because it prevents one difficult season from becoming a permanent identity. Physical health deserves special attention because it quietly supports every other area of discipline. Sleep, movement, hydration, and nourishing food may seem ordinary compared to major goals, yet they influence decision-making more than many people realize. During stressful periods, these habits are often treated as optional. People sacrifice rest to complete more work, skip meals because schedules become crowded, or abandon movement because time feels limited. Over time, these choices reduce mental clarity, weaken emotional stability, and make disciplined decisions more difficult. Protecting basic physical habits is not an interruption to meaningful work. It is one of the reasons meaningful work remains possible. There is also value in accepting that every season requires different expectations. Holding yourself to the exact same standards during every phase of life may appear disciplined, but it often ignores reality. A parent caring for a newborn, a student preparing for important examinations, or someone recovering from illness cannot reasonably expect identical routines. Maturity involves adjusting methods while protecting principles. The principle remains constant. You continue caring for your health, developing your character, and honoring your responsibilities. The method changes to match current circumstances. Flexibility preserves consistency without demanding perfection. One quiet advantage of reliable habits is that they reduce the number of decisions required during emotionally difficult periods. When sadness, uncertainty, or stress become overwhelming, even simple choices can feel exhausting. Habits provide structure when motivation is weak. You brush your teeth because that is what you always do. You take a walk because it belongs in your day. You write a few thoughts before bed because the notebook always waits beside you. These routines become gentle anchors. They remind you that although many things have changed, not everything has been lost. Difficult seasons also reveal which habits are connected to genuine values and which exist only because they were convenient. A habit rooted in appearance may disappear when external praise fades. A habit rooted in health has deeper staying power. A routine based entirely on excitement may vanish during stressful weeks. One connected to personal integrity continues because it reflects who you choose to be rather than how you happen to feel. The stronger the connection between your habits and your values, the greater the chance those habits will survive life's inevitable challenges. There will always be periods when progress slows. Some seasons ask you to advance quickly. Others simply ask you to remain steady. Remaining steady should never be mistaken for standing still. Continuing healthy behaviors through hardship often requires more strength than making dramatic improvements during easier times. Quiet persistence protects the foundation that future growth will eventually build upon. Years from now, you may discover that the habits which shaped your character were not the ones you practiced when everything was going well. They were the small, faithful actions you continued when life became uncertain, your energy was limited, and no one would have blamed you for stopping. When that kind of season arrives again, which of your daily habits will still recognize you, and which ones have been depending on comfort all along? Chapter 8. Protect valuable time through intentional choices every waking moment. Time is one of the few parts of life that moves in only one direction. Money can be earned again, skills can be developed later, trust can sometimes be rebuilt after it has been damaged. Even physical strength can improve with patient effort. Time offers no such opportunity. Every hour that passes becomes part of your history, never your future. This reality is not meant to create anxiety. It is meant to create awareness. When you begin treating time as something valuable instead of something unlimited, your daily decisions naturally become more intentional. Discipline is expressed not only by what you choose to do, but also by what you choose not to do. Every meaningful commitment quietly requires saying no to countless alternatives. Many people believe they lose time through major mistakes. More often, time disappears through small, unnoticed choices repeated every day. 5 minutes spent checking one unnecessary notification becomes 20. A short break extends into an hour of endless scrolling. One postponed conversation creates weeks of misunderstanding. A task delayed until tomorrow becomes a source of ongoing mental pressure. None of these moments feel significant while they are happening. Together, however, they quietly shape the direction of an entire life. Time is rarely stolen all at once. It is usually surrendered in small pieces that seem too insignificant to matter until they are viewed together. Behavioral psychology offers an important explanation for why this happens. The human brain naturally prefers activities that provide immediate emotional rewards. Easy entertainment, familiar routines, and effortless distractions produce quick satisfaction with very little mental effort. Meaningful work often asks for something different. It requires concentration before reward appears. This creates an ongoing tension between what feels pleasant now and what creates value later. Protecting your time does not require rejecting enjoyment or rest. It requires learning to distinguish between recovery that renews your energy and distraction that quietly consumes your future without giving anything meaningful in return. One useful question can transform the way you think about your day. Instead of asking whether an activity fills time, ask whether it deserves time. These are very different questions. Almost anything can occupy an afternoon. Very few activities genuinely improve your health, strengthen your relationships, deepen your understanding, or move you closer to meaningful goals. Intentional living begins when you stop measuring your days by how busy they appear and begin measuring them by what truly received your attention. Activity creates movement. Purpose creates direction. Without direction, even the busiest schedule can leave you feeling as though little of lasting importance has been accomplished. Think about the difference between reacting to your day and designing it. Many people begin each morning by immediately responding to whatever demands their attention first. Messages arrive, emails accumulate, unexpected requests appear. Hours pass while solving problems that someone else decided were urgent. By evening, they feel exhausted, yet the work that mattered most remains unfinished. Another person begins differently. Before responding to the outside world, they identify the few responsibilities that deserve their clearest thinking. Those priorities become protected rather than postponed. Unexpected interruptions still occur because life remains unpredictable, but the most meaningful work no longer depends entirely on whatever time happens to remain. This approach requires accepting an uncomfortable truth. Every yes carries a hidden no. Saying yes to another unnecessary meeting often means saying no to uninterrupted creative work. Agreeing to every request may mean sacrificing time needed for family, rest, or personal growth. Accepting endless distractions often means declining the opportunity to become exceptionally skilled in something important. Many people struggle with boundaries because they focus only on the immediate benefit of saying yes. They rarely consider the unseen cost. Time is limited, which means every commitment quietly competes with another. Learning to protect your schedule is not selfish when it allows you to honor the responsibilities that matter most. Relationships provide one of the clearest examples of intentional time. People often assume that meaningful connection depends on extraordinary experiences. More often, it grows through ordinary moments that receive complete attention. Sitting with a child without checking your phone, listening carefully while a friend speaks, sharing an evening meal without rushing toward the next obligation, taking a walk with someone you love instead of remaining distracted by endless tasks. These moments may appear small, yet they often become the memories people value most. Time communicates priorities more honestly than words. Where you consistently place your attention reveals what truly matters to you. There is another reason intentional choices become increasingly important as life grows busier. Every decision carries a mental cost. Constantly switching between unrelated activities drains attention, even if each task seems simple. Someone who spends the day answering messages every few minutes while attempting meaningful work often finishes mentally exhausted without understanding why. The fatigue comes not only from the amount of work completed, but from the number of times attention was interrupted. Grouping similar activities together, protecting periods for deep concentration, and reducing unnecessary decision-making all preserve mental energy. You are not simply managing your schedule, you are protecting the quality of your thinking. Many people speak about finding more time, yet time is rarely found. It is created through deliberate choices. No calendar suddenly produces an extra hour. The opportunity appears when something less valuable is intentionally removed. This realization shifts responsibility back into your hands. Instead of waiting for life to become less demanding, you begin asking what can be simplified, postponed, delegated, or eliminated. The answer may not always be easy because some commitments genuinely matter, yet many obligations continue only because they have never been questioned. Intentional living requires the courage to examine where your hours actually go instead of where you hope they go. One practical habit is learning to pause before making new commitments. Immediate agreement often feels generous because it avoids disappointment or conflict. However, many unnecessary obligations begin with quick decisions that receive little reflection. A brief pause creates space to ask whether the commitment aligns with your values, supports your responsibilities, and fits realistically within your existing priorities. This small habit prevents your schedule from becoming controlled by other people's urgency rather than your own purpose. Saying yes thoughtfully often creates more value than saying yes automatically. Time also deserves protection from perfectionism. Some people spend excessive hours trying to improve work that is already good enough. Others delay beginning because they imagine ideal conditions that never arrive. Both patterns quietly waste valuable opportunities. Excellence matters, but endless refinement can become another form of avoidance. Progress often depends on completing meaningful work consistently rather than endlessly adjusting details that make little difference. Knowing when something is complete enough to move forward is an important form of wisdom. It allows your time to serve future growth instead of remaining trapped in endless revision. Another quiet threat to time is emotional avoidance. Difficult conversations, financial decisions, health appointments, or unresolved responsibilities are often postponed because they create temporary discomfort. Unfortunately, these unfinished matters rarely disappear. They continue occupying mental space while often becoming more complicated over time. Addressing important issues early usually requires less energy than carrying them indefinitely. Every postponed responsibility quietly claims future attention. Every resolved responsibility returns that attention to you. Protecting time, therefore, involves more than scheduling. It also involves facing what needs to be handled before it grows larger. Rest deserves a place in this conversation because intentional living is not about filling every moment with productivity. A disciplined life recognizes that thoughtful recovery supports meaningful contribution. Sleep restores attention. Quiet reflection clarifies judgment. Time with loved ones strengthens emotional well-being. Recreation can renew creativity when chosen deliberately. The difference lies in intention. Rest prepares you to return with greater presence. Mindless distraction often leaves you feeling less refreshed than before. Protecting time means recognizing the difference between what restores your energy and what simply occupies your attention. As you become more aware of how you spend your days, another shift begins to occur. You stop asking whether you have enough time and begin asking whether your current choices reflect your deepest values. This question changes everything because it removes the illusion that time management is only about efficiency. At its heart, it is about character. The calendar becomes a visible expression of invisible priorities. Your habits reveal what you believe deserves your life. Every morning offers another opportunity to align those two things more closely. Years pass more quietly than most people expect. Seasons change, children grow, careers evolve, friendships deepen or fade, and opportunities come and go. Looking back, people rarely remember every email they answered or every unnecessary distraction they entertained. They remember the work that gave them purpose, the people who shaped their lives, the conversations that changed their thinking, and the moments when they chose what truly mattered instead of what merely demanded attention. Every new day places the same invisible gift in your hands. It arrives with a fixed number of hours, asking nothing more than a decision about how they will be used. When tomorrow becomes today, what kind of life will your choices quietly begin creating before the day is even over? Chapter 9. Maintain disciplined progress despite setbacks, doubts, and temporary failures. Every meaningful journey eventually reaches a moment when progress becomes difficult to recognize. The effort continues, yet the results seem delayed. A setback interrupts your momentum. An unexpected mistake challenges your confidence. Doubt begins asking whether all the work has been worthwhile. These moments are not exceptions to the disciplined life, they are part of it. The difference between people who continue growing and those who quietly give up is often found in how they respond when progress no longer feels rewarding. Discipline is not measured only by what you do during successful seasons. It is revealed most clearly when circumstances stop providing encouragement and you choose to continue anyway. Human beings naturally search for patterns that help them predict the future. This ability allows us to learn from experience, but it also creates a hidden weakness. When something goes wrong, the mind often assumes the setback represents what will happen next. One disappointing result becomes evidence that future attempts may also fail. This tendency is understandable because the brain wants to protect you from repeating painful experiences. Unfortunately, it often confuses temporary outcomes with permanent reality. A failed presentation does not prove you cannot communicate effectively. A rejected application does not determine your future opportunities. One difficult season does not define the rest of your life. Discipline begins by refusing to allow a single moment to become the entire story. One of the greatest misunderstandings about successful people is the belief that they experience fewer doubts than everyone else. In reality, doubt visits almost every meaningful pursuit. The person beginning a business wonders whether the effort will succeed. The student preparing for an important examination questions whether enough has been learned. The parent worries about making the right decisions. The leader wonders whether others trust their judgment. Doubt is not unusual. It is often a natural response to responsibility because important goals carry meaningful consequences. The disciplined person does not wait for doubt to disappear. They learn to move thoughtfully while uncertainty remains present. Temporary failure often creates a stronger emotional reaction than it deserves because people attach it to their identity instead of their behavior. Missing an important deadline becomes, "I am unreliable." Struggling with a new skill becomes, "I am not capable." A difficult conversation becomes, "I am bad at relationships." These conclusions feel convincing because emotions tend to simplify complex experiences into broad personal judgments. A healthier perspective separates the event from the person. You made a mistake. You are not the mistake. You experienced failure. You are not defined by failure. This distinction protects both accountability and hope because it allows improvement without destroying self-respect. Think about someone learning to play a musical instrument. During the early months, progress often feels inconsistent. Some days the music flows naturally. Other days, simple exercises become frustrating. If every difficult practice session is interpreted as evidence of limited talent, the person may stop long before meaningful ability develops. If those same challenges are understood as normal parts of learning, persistence becomes much easier. The discomfort remains, but its meaning changes. Instead of signaling defeat, it becomes evidence that growth is still taking place. The same principle applies to almost every meaningful pursuit in life. Setbacks also reveal an important truth about motivation. When everything is going well, enthusiasm often provides enough energy to continue. After disappointment, enthusiasm usually fades. This is where systems, routines, and personal standards become more valuable than emotional excitement. Someone who writes every morning because it belongs to their identity continues writing even after receiving criticism. A person committed to improving their health keeps moving despite slow results because the routine exists independently of today's emotions. Discipline protects progress by reducing dependence on changing feelings. It creates stability when motivation naturally becomes inconsistent. There is wisdom in learning how to evaluate failure accurately. Some setbacks result from poor preparation. Others arise because circumstances changed unexpectedly. Some reveal weaknesses that need attention. Others simply reflect the reality that worthwhile goals involve uncertainty. Treating every failure as identical prevents useful learning. Careful reflection asks different questions. What was under my control? What was outside my control? What can I improve before the next attempt? What should remain unchanged because the original decision was still meaningful? Honest evaluation transforms disappointment into practical knowledge. Emotional reactions eventually settle, but lessons remain available if you choose to notice them. Another challenge appears when progress becomes slower than expected. Many people begin with unrealistic timelines. They imagine that disciplined effort will produce rapid transformation. When change develops gradually instead, discouragement quietly replaces determination. This often happens because people compare their current reality to an ideal future rather than to their previous starting point. Small improvements become invisible because attention remains fixed on what has not yet been achieved. Looking back occasionally with honesty can reveal growth that daily observation misses. Better decisions, stronger emotional control, improved communication, healthier habits, and greater resilience often develop so gradually that they become noticeable only after months of consistent effort. Relationships also experience seasons where progress feels uncertain. Trust may take a long time to rebuild after disappointment. Family conflicts may require many patient conversations before understanding grows. Friendships sometimes become distant because life changes, responsibilities increase, or misunderstandings remain unresolved. Disciplined commitment in relationships means continuing to practice honesty, kindness, and respect, even when immediate improvement is not obvious. Healthy relationships are rarely strengthened through one dramatic gesture. They are built through repeated choices that reflect character over time. Another important lesson involves how you speak after experiencing a setback. The stories you repeat influence how you interpret your future. Saying, "Nothing ever works out," closes possibilities before new opportunities appear. Saying, "This attempt taught me something I needed to learn," keeps the mind engaged in problem solving. Language shapes attention. Attention shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. Choosing words that encourage responsibility and learning does not deny disappointment. It simply prevents disappointment from becoming your permanent perspective. Discipline also requires accepting that progress is rarely perfectly consistent. There will be weeks when everything seems to move forward smoothly. There will also be periods when illness, family responsibilities, unexpected challenges, or emotional exhaustion reduce your pace. Slower progress is not the same as abandoning progress. Many people become discouraged because they mistake temporary reduction for permanent decline. They believe that if they cannot perform at their highest level, there is little value in continuing at all. A wiser approach recognizes that steady movement, even at a slower pace, protects momentum. Small steps taken consistently often accomplish more than dramatic efforts followed by long periods of inactivity. Fear of future failure can become another hidden obstacle. After experiencing disappointment, people sometimes avoid new opportunities because they hope to prevent further pain. This response feels safe in the moment, but it quietly limits future growth. Every meaningful achievement requires accepting uncertainty. There is no guaranteed path that removes all possibility of failure. The disciplined person understands that avoiding every risk also means avoiding many opportunities. Instead of seeking certainty, they seek preparation. They strengthen their skills, improve their judgment, and accept that some outcomes will remain beyond complete control. One of the most powerful habits during difficult periods is returning your attention to today's responsibilities instead of becoming overwhelmed by distant concerns. When doubt grows, the future often appears larger than it really is. questions multiply faster than answers. What if this never works? What if I disappoint others? What if I am wasting my time? These thoughts create emotional weight because they focus on possibilities that cannot yet be resolved. Discipline gently redirects attention toward what can actually be done today. Complete today's work. Keep today's promise. Make today's honest decision. Tomorrow will eventually become another today. Progress is built through the accumulation of present actions rather than endless speculation about the future. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. Setbacks lose some of their power because they no longer surprise you. Doubt becomes familiar rather than frightening. Temporary failures become expected teachers instead of permanent verdicts. You stop measuring yourself by isolated moments and begin measuring yourself by your willingness to return after each interruption. This quiet resilience becomes one of the greatest strengths a person can develop because life will always contain unexpected difficulties. The ability to begin again without losing your direction is often more valuable than never stumbling at all. The road toward meaningful growth is rarely free from obstacles, unanswered questions, or disappointing results. Yet every time you continue despite them, you reinforce something deeper than success. You strengthen your character. You teach yourself that your commitment is greater than your temporary emotions and stronger than your immediate circumstances. Eventually, the question is no longer whether setbacks will appear. The question becomes whether each one will persuade you to stop or quietly prepare you for the person you are still capable of becoming. Chapter 10. Commit daily because disciplined living creates lasting personal freedom. Freedom is often misunderstood. Many people imagine it as the ability to do whatever they want whenever they want. At first glance, that idea sounds appealing because it promises a life without limits or obligations. Yet experience tells a different story. A person who follows every impulse rarely becomes free. They become controlled by changing emotions, temporary desires, and immediate comfort. A person who avoids responsibility may escape effort for a while, but eventually faces consequences that narrow future choices. Real freedom is quieter than that. It grows from the ability to guide your own life according to values instead of impulses. It is the confidence that comes from knowing your decisions are no longer controlled by whatever feels easiest in the moment. Discipline creates this kind of freedom because it replaces reaction with intention. Every decision you repeat eventually shapes the range of choices available later. Someone who consistently manages money with care gains greater financial flexibility over time. A person who protects their health through regular movement, thoughtful eating, and sufficient rest often enjoys more physical independence as the years pass. Someone who develops reliable professional skills gains opportunities that remain unavailable to those who avoid consistent effort. None of these freedoms appear overnight. They are earned gradually through ordinary decisions that seem almost insignificant while they are being made. This is one of the great paradoxes of discipline. Temporary limits often create greater possibilities in the future. Behavioral psychology explains why this feels difficult at first. The human mind naturally pays more attention to immediate sacrifice than to distant reward. Declining an unnecessary purchase feels like losing something today. Saving the money quietly creates opportunities that may not appear for years. Choosing to exercise before work demands effort in the present, while the greatest benefits accumulate gradually. Speaking honestly during a difficult conversation may create temporary discomfort while strengthening trust over time. The brain notices today's inconvenience more easily than tomorrow's freedom because tomorrow has not yet become visible. Discipline teaches you to value future possibilities even when current emotions cannot fully appreciate them. One of the greatest forms of personal freedom is emotional independence. This does not mean eliminating emotions or becoming indifferent to life. It means refusing to let every feeling become the final authority over your behavior. Anger no longer forces careless words. Fear no longer decides whether you pursue meaningful opportunities. Discouragement no longer convinces you to abandon valuable commitments. Happiness no longer causes you to ignore important responsibilities. Emotions continue to exist because they are part of being human, but they no longer control the direction of your life. Discipline quietly moves your center of decision-making from temporary feelings to enduring principles. Think about someone who has spent years developing financial responsibility. They regularly save a portion of their income, avoid unnecessary debt, and make thoughtful spending decisions. During those years, others may have appeared to enjoy greater immediate freedom by purchasing whatever they wanted without much consideration. Then unexpected challenges arrive: an economic downturn, a job loss, or a sudden family need changes everything. The disciplined individual now possesses options because previous choices created stability. The person who consistently followed immediate desires may discover that what once looked like freedom has quietly become dependence. Daily discipline often protects tomorrow before tomorrow's problems are even visible. The same principle applies to health. A body cared for consistently offers more opportunities than one neglected through years of avoidable habits. The goal is not perfection, because illness and aging remain part of every human life. Rather, discipline increases the likelihood that you can continue serving the people you love, pursuing meaningful work, and enjoying ordinary experiences with greater energy. Every healthy decision is less about controlling the future than about preparing yourself to meet it with greater strength. Freedom often begins with the quiet realization that your future self deserves the benefits of your present choices. Relationships reveal another dimension of disciplined living. Trust creates freedom between people. When others know your words match your actions, they feel safe relying on you. They spend less time questioning your intentions because consistency has already answered those questions. A reliable friend enjoys deeper connection. A dependable partner experiences greater intimacy. A trustworthy leader gains influence because people believe commitments will be honored. These freedoms cannot be demanded. They are earned through countless ordinary moments where integrity quietly becomes visible. Character creates opportunities that talent alone cannot sustain. Many people spend years searching for dramatic breakthroughs while overlooking the quiet power of daily commitment. They believe transformation must arrive through extraordinary effort. More often, meaningful change appears because ordinary actions continue long after excitement fades. Reading a few pages each evening gradually expands understanding. Saving a small amount regularly builds financial security. Practicing one valuable skill every day eventually creates expertise. Speaking with patience consistently strengthens relationships. None of these actions attract much attention in the moment. Their influence becomes clear only after enough days have accumulated. Discipline works slowly enough to test your commitment, but steadily enough to reward it. There is also freedom in knowing that your identity no longer changes with every success or failure. People who depend entirely on external results often experience emotional instability. Success creates temporary confidence, failure destroys it. Praise feels essential because self-worth depends upon it. Criticism becomes unbearable because it threatens personal identity. Daily discipline creates a more stable foundation. You begin respecting yourself because you know how you behave when no one is watching. Your confidence grows from repeated evidence rather than unpredictable approval. This inner stability becomes one of the greatest freedoms available because it cannot be easily taken away by changing circumstances. Another important shift occurs when you stop viewing discipline as something you occasionally practice and begin seeing it as an expression of who you are. Identity influences behavior more deeply than motivation ever can. Someone who believes they are becoming a dependable person naturally asks different questions throughout the day. Instead of wondering whether they feel like honoring a commitment, they ask what a dependable person would choose. Instead of asking whether they are in the mood to improve, they ask whether today's actions reflect the character they are building. This perspective reduces internal conflict because discipline becomes aligned with identity rather than competing against it. Life will continue offering reasons to postpone meaningful work. Unexpected responsibilities will arise. Fatigue will appear. Some days your progress will seem invisible. Other days success may tempt you to become complacent. Discipline is not the absence of these experiences. It is the repeated decision to return to what matters despite them. Every morning quietly presents the same opportunity. You begin again, not because yesterday was perfect, and not because tomorrow is guaranteed, but because today's choices remain available. Commitment is renewed one day at a time. This simple truth prevents overwhelming goals from becoming emotionally exhausting. You do not have to master the rest of your life today. You only have to honor the opportunities this day provides. There is wisdom in accepting that disciplined living does not eliminate difficulty. Challenges remain part of every meaningful life. Responsibilities continue. Disappointments still arrive. Loss, uncertainty, and change cannot be avoided completely. What changes is your relationship with those experiences. You become less easily shaken because your habits provide stability. You recover more quickly because your character has been strengthened through repeated practice. You make clearer decisions because your values remain visible even during emotional moments. Freedom is not created because life becomes easier. It is created because you become more capable of meeting life with steadiness instead of confusion. As the years pass, the effects of discipline often become more visible. The person who consistently learnt continues growing while others stopped long ago. The one who cared for relationships enjoys deeper trust. The individual who managed time thoughtfully has memories built around meaningful experiences rather than endless distraction. The person who protected physical and emotional health possesses greater capacity to serve others. Looking back, these outcomes rarely appear dramatic. They simply reveal the accumulated power of thousands of ordinary decisions that quietly pointed in the same direction. Perhaps the greatest reward of disciplined living is peace, not the fragile peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but the deeper peace that comes from knowing you are becoming someone whose actions increasingly reflect your values. There is comfort in ending a day aware that you honored your responsibilities, treated others with respect, and continued moving toward what truly matters. You may still have goals left to pursue and lessons left to learn, but you are no longer living by accident. Your life is being shaped intentionally, one decision at a time. Every sunrise offers a choice that no one else can make for you. It is rarely dramatic, and it rarely announces its importance. It simply asks whether today's actions will be guided by passing impulses or enduring principles. Years from now, when the ordinary days have quietly become the story of your life, what kind of freedom will those daily choices have patiently created?